The stale smell of last night's pizza clung to the air as I fumbled with the keys, the lock protesting with a familiar groan. Sarah hadn't mentioned anything about company. I pushed the door open, expecting the usual quiet of a Sunday afternoon. Instead, I was greeted by a scene straight out of a bad sitcom. Sarah, perched on the edge of the couch, legs intertwined with Mark, his hand a little too far up her thigh. Mark, flamboyant as ever in my favorite hoodie, offered a limp wrist wave and a strained, "Oh, hey Dave." The room swam. Not because of what they were doing, exactly. It was the way they were doing it. An intimacy, a comfort that screamed something more than friendship. Sarah's immediate defense was, "Dave, don't be ridiculous. You know Mark's gay." But the air hung thick with unspoken tension, a silent accusation that settled like lead in my gut. I knew, in that instant, something was profoundly wrong. Gay, she'd said, like that word was a shield against any possible doubt. Maybe it should have been. But the seed of suspicion was planted. Now, the film reel of our relationship started playing backward in my head, each scene tinted with a new, unsettling light. I met Sarah at a gallery opening downtown. She was radiant, an art student, full of passion and pronouncements about societal norms and the patriarchy. I, a fresh-faced software engineer with a steady job and a sensible haircut, was instantly smitten. Looking back, I see the first red flag waving furiously. I downplayed a promotion that required relocation because she was finding herself here. My sensible haircut probably should have sensed the storm brewing. Then came Mark. He breezed into our lives like a flamboyant hurricane, introduced as Sarah's bestie from art school. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was theatrical, witty, and always ready with a supportive shoulder for Sarah to cry on after her latest artistic breakthrough. He even offered me fashion advice, which, admittedly, I probably needed. The borrowing started subtly, a scarf, a belt, then eventually, my limited edition Air Jordans. "Don't worry, Dave, I'll take such good care of them." He'd trill, batting his eyelashes. He was always around. Coffee dates with Sarah turned into three-person affairs. Movie nights became a cuddle puddle on my couch. He was a permanent fixture. A third wheel who somehow convinced us he was essential to the bicycle. Looking back, the signs were glaring. The late-night talks that Sarah insisted were just about art. The inside jokes I wasn't privy to, the way they seemed to communicate without words. I just chalked it up to gay best friend things. "You wouldn't understand, Dave. You're just a basic dude," Sarah would say, laughing it off. The borrowed shoes were the tipping point, though. My prized, never-worn off-white Dunks. Mark wore them to some pretentious gallery opening and scuffed them. When I confronted him, Sarah jumped to his defense. "They're just shoes, Dave. Get over yourself." Besides, he looked amazing in them. The seeds of resentment were sown. My growing unease didn't go unnoticed, of course. But whenever I dared to voice my concerns, Sarah would roll her eyes and launch into a tirade about my toxic masculinity and fragile ego. "You're just jealous, Dave. Can't you handle the fact that I have a close friend who's not trying to sleep with me?" The homophobia card was her trump. Any questioning of Mark's behavior was immediately framed as bigotry. It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. I started second-guessing myself, wondering if I was the problem. Maybe I was just an insecure, jealous boyfriend. Maybe I was reading too much into things. The gaslighting was subtle, insidious, and effective. Meanwhile, the financial burden of our relationship rested squarely on my shoulders. Sarah's artistic pursuits were, Let's just say they weren't exactly lucrative. I picked up extra shifts, foregoing nights out with the guys, all to keep the lights on and fund her creative endeavors. The promotion I'd passed on, it stung more with each passing month. Resentment simmered beneath the surface. I watched my savings dwindle, my career stagnate, and my dreams fade, all while Sarah and Mark gallivanted around town, attending gallery openings and sipping overpriced cocktails on my dime. I was becoming a sugar daddy without the sugar, a goddamn ATM with a sensible haircut. Needing a break from the Sarah and Mark show, I finally carved out a guy's night. Burgers, beers, and bullshit, the usual. But this time, the bullshit felt different. Liam, bless his blunt soul, didn't mince words. Dude, that Mark guy gives me the creeps. And I'm not buying the whole gay act. He checks Sarah out more than you do. Another friend, Mike, chimed in, and she's always defending him. It's like she's trying to convince herself he's gay. They pointed out the double standards. If I had a female best friend constantly borrowing Sarah's clothes and spending all our time together, it'd be World War III. The seeds of doubt, already planted, began to sprout. Fueled by their words, I started paying closer attention. Sarah's social media became a window into a carefully curated reality. Endless selfies, inspirational quotes, and of course, photos with Mark. Always posed just so, smiles a little too wide, captions hinting at some deep, unspoken connection. The comments were even more telling, gushing praise from her followers, and a suspicious number of heart emojis from Mark himself. There were even a few comments I didn't understand at all, inside jokes and references that excluded me entirely. It was like watching a play I hadn't been given the script for. Her need for external validation was insatiable. The dam finally broke. I confronted Sarah, presenting my case, the suspicious photos, the constant borrowing, the late-night talks, the friends' warnings. Her reaction was predictable. Tears, accusations of being controlling, and the ever-reliable, "You just don't get our friendship." "Are you saying you think I'm attracted to Mark?" she shrieked, feigning outrage. "That's disgusting. How dare you be so insecure? I can't believe you try to control who I'm friends with." She twisted the narrative, painting me as the villain, the oppressive boyfriend trying to stifle her freedom. The argument escalated, leaving me feeling drained and defeated, convinced that I was indeed the crazy one. But something still gnawed at me. The guy's words, the social media breadcrumbs, it wouldn't let me go. One night, while Sarah was at a gallery opening read, out with Mark, I did something I never thought I'd do. I looked at her phone. Hidden beneath layers of selfies and art memes, I found it. A text message thread with Mark. "Can't wait to see you tonight." One message read, "Dave's being such a jealous idiot. I need you." Followed by a string of heart emojis. The illusion shattered. The carefully constructed facade crumbled. It hit me like a punch to the gut. All the gaslighting, the deflecting, the accusations, it was all a smokescreen. The "oh shit" moment was here. The immediate aftermath was a blur of disbelief and anger. I paced the apartment, replaying every interaction, every red flag I'd ignored. How could I have been so blind? So stupid? I felt like a complete and utter fool. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. It wasn't just the infidelity, it was the lies, the manipulation, the blatant disregard for my feelings. The realization that I'd been played, used, and gaslit for months was a crushing blow to my ego. My pride was wounded, my trust shattered, and my faith in relationships non-existent. Then came the anger. Not the white-hot rage you see in movies, but a cold, simmering fury. It was directed not just at Sarah and Mark, but at myself, for being so naive, so willing to ignore the obvious, for letting myself be manipulated and taken advantage of. I started devouring information online, stumbling across corners of the internet I never knew existed. Red pill forums, MGTOW communities, incel threads, which I quickly realized weren't for me. Too much self-pity. I began to see patterns, to understand the hypergamy, the female nature, the societal conditioning that had blinded me for so long. It was a harsh, uncomfortable awakening. I decided to confront Mark, not with shouting or threats, but with cold, calculated composure. I found him at a coffee shop, preening in front of a mirror. "We need to talk," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. He initially tried to play the victim, feigning ignorance. But I laid out the facts. The text messages, the obvious deception. His flamboyant facade crumbled, revealing a pathetic, insecure man desperately seeking validation. He admitted to everything, even boasting about how easy Sarah was. I simply stared at him, disgusted. I told him he could keep the shoes. He looked confused. I just walked away. The final confrontation with Sarah was anticlimactic. I laid out the truth, the text messages, Mark's confession. She didn't deny it. Instead, she launched into a self-pitying monologue about how I was never emotionally available, how I didn't support her art, how I was too boring for her. She blamed me for the affair. The entitlement was astounding. "You pushed me away, Dave. Mark just understands me in a way you never could." There was no remorse, no accountability. Just a desperate attempt to rewrite history and cast herself as the victim. It was then I truly understood the red pill. The lack of self-awareness was breathtaking. I let them enjoy the silence together. There was no shouting, no dramatic accusations, no begging for forgiveness. I simply packed my things, changed the locks, and walked away. I cut off all contact, blocked her on social media, and refused to engage in any further drama. It wasn't easy. The urge to lash out, to seek revenge, to demand answers was overwhelming. But I knew that engaging would only prolong the pain and give her the attention she craved. My well-being, my sanity, my future were far more important than satisfying some fleeting desire for retribution. I chose dignity over drama. The months that followed were dedicated to rebuilding. I threw myself into my career, landing that promotion I'd once sacrificed. My savings account started to swell again. I rediscovered hobbies I'd neglected, spending weekends hiking, playing guitar, and reconnecting with my friends. I embraced self-reliance, learning to cook, fix things around the house, and manage my finances with ruthless efficiency. I realized that my value wasn't defined by my relationship status or a woman's approval. I was whole, complete, and capable on my own. The sensible haircut started looking a little sharper, too. I heard through the grapevine that Sarah and Mark's relationship imploded spectacularly. Apparently, his understanding only extended as far as my wallet did. Her art career continued to flounder, and his charm wore thin. They fought constantly, fueled by jealousy and insecurity. Karma, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. I didn't orchestrate their downfall. I didn't even want to know the details. But the schadenfreude was undeniable. Their inherent toxicity was a self-fulfilling prophecy. They were destined to self-destruct. And I was just glad I wasn't around to witness the fallout. Looking back, I see the red flags waving frantically from the very beginning. The career sacrifice, the financial dependence, the constant need for validation, the gay best friend conveniently filling the emotional void. I understand now that Sarah wasn't a victim of circumstance. She was a product of a culture that encourages female entitlement and a lack of accountability. The biggest lesson, however, was prioritizing self-respect above all else. To value my time, my energy, and my resources. To recognize my worth as an individual, not as a provider or a partner. That, my friends, is a lesson worth more than any pair of off-white dunks. The irony, of course, is that she insisted I couldn't be jealous of a gay friend. Turns out, I should have been jealous of a straight one. Or, better yet, no friend at all. Modern relationships, am I right? It's a minefield of mixed signals, unrealistic expectations, and carefully curated online personas. But amidst the wreckage, I found something valuable, the importance of male solidarity. My friends, those blunt, honest bastards, saw the red flags long before I did. They offered support, guidance, and a healthy dose of perspective. This story, gentlemen, is for you. So, where does that leave me? Well, I'm not bitter. Not really. Wiser, certainly. More discerning, absolutely. I've embraced the MGTOW philosophy, not as a rejection of women, but as an affirmation of self-ownership. I'm choosing my own path, prioritizing my own happiness, and refusing to compromise my values for anyone. The peace that comes with independence is unparalleled. No more gaslighting. No more financial drain. No more emotional manipulation. Just freedom, purpose, and a well-maintained pair of off-white dunks that I wear. And to Mark, you can keep the shoes, buddy. You earned them.